Hey, there it is. Hey, friends. Welcome back to Eric Nevins Live. I'm so excited that you're here. I am excited for this conversation. I'll just tell you, we're all warmed up. We're ready to go. And it was great. So I guarantee we're going to have a great show for you today. So welcome to the live. Friends, this is a conversation. So let me just give you a couple of housekeeping things. First of all, you can, anywhere you're watching this, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, for crying out loud. You can go there. You can comment your questions, your thoughts, your whatever you've got. You can toss that in there. In fact, we're going to have a question here just a second, and I want to hear from you. So we have a open conversation policy. I'm going to have a conversation with our guest, but I want you to be part of it because that is what I do. I curate. I think it's been on my Facebook profile for a while. I curate conversations that make you curious. I guarantee today is going to be one of those. So if you would, especially you enjoy this conversation, let me just ask you, go to YouTube. That is the best place to connect and follow us here. We're working on building that there, and we all start somewhere. It's growing, and I'm excited about that. That's a lot of fun. So I invite you to be part of it. All right. We should dive in because we're here for an excellent conversation. Let me get that started here, and we're going to have a great time. Okay, so friends, here we go. Now, you might be one of these people. If you're like me, I see opportunities kind of everywhere. So maybe you want to start a business and kind of share your message online, but you're hesitant. So I think about this all the time because I am chronically online. I'm on like TikTok and stuff like that. I see people doing this, right? So you've seen people do this too, right? So, but they kind of seem to be chained to their screens, constantly posting, responding, managing drama, getting haters, all that kind of stuff. I hear this from my podcasters all the time. They want to grow their platform, but they don't want to lose their peace in the process, right? And so maybe you've even thought, well, but if I attract an audience, won't I also attract trolls? It's a really real concern, and it keeps a lot of creators, I think, from fully stepping into that calling and that kind of mission that they have. So if that's you, I got great news for you. Our guest today, she knows how to build online spaces and foster real connection, not chaos. I guarantee you're going to learn something today. She's a community strategist and fractional CMO and COO who helps founders and organizations turn connection into competitive advantage, which is so good, by aligning marketing operations and customer experience around belonging. I love that. It's such a great value that I think matters so much. She's also the host of Find Your Freaks. We're going to talk about that, a podcast that explores how people build spaces where others can show up exactly as they are and truly thrive. Our guest is the one and only Tonya Kubo. Tonya, welcome to the live. I'm glad you're here.
Hey, Eric, thanks so much for having me. This is a blast. I have shared it in all the places already.
Thank you. I sure appreciate that. That is so good. I always enjoy our conversations because I think we're kind of on the same wavelength. So I'm glad that you're here. But it's a big kind of broad ranging introduction there. But so I'm curious about you. Like, give us kind of some of your history with online communities because I know it's extensive. So kind of fill us in.
Well, let's go way back into the dark ages of the internet. Because I always say I've been doing this since before the iPhone existed, which is true. And the iPhone, in case you didn't know, that came out roughly September of 2007. So prior to that, let's probably about 2003, 2004, I was working at a community newspaper and we went online. So when I started at that newspaper in 2000, our online edition consisted of uploading the PDF of the daily newspaper to the website, right? We used Dreamweaver. It was a whole thing. So we went to an actual interactive online website, which you're much more familiar with these days, but it was the latest, greatest, and it had a comment section. But back then, you had one choice with comments. You could have comments enabled or comments disabled. There wasn't a lot of moderation tools available to you with newspaper style websites. And so I got a very fast introduction to what I like to call the seedy underbelly of the community and the internet. So when you were talking about trolls, it's like in those early days, it felt like the only people commenting on newspaper articles online were trolls. And so I learned, first of all, I got a thick skin really, really fast. But I also learned a lot about human behavior and human dynamics, like people who felt very who were like nice people every day, right? If you like bumped into them at a coffee shop, they would say, "Oh my gosh, excuse me." Lost their marbles when they felt like they were anonymous behind a keyboard. I also learned how to figure out the questions under the questions, right? Sometimes people came across incredibly caustic, but really there was some level of hurt. They were attacking because they assumed you would attack back. And let me just tell you, it was like decently a PhD in diplomacy for those years. Then you fast track over into 2007. And when the iPhone comes out, suddenly we're introduced to the fact that you can scroll on a device.
Yeah.
So now online community isn't just for people who are desk workers, isn't just relegated to that period of time when you can sit in front of a home computer, right? That's what we had with message boards or even the early days of AOL online. Well, now you could take community with you if you had, a smartphone, and then we got social media and things went faster and faster and faster. And Facebook groups came around about 2009. Right? People don't realize that Facebook did not launch with groups because for so many people, they don't remember life on Facebook without groups. And when that happened, I started getting a lot of clients who I had helped with their message board communities come to me to help them migrate over into Facebook. And I had already been working on Facebook groups with the university where I was working and also helping authors with book launches. So we were already using groups for that because they were just really easy.
Yep.
And as they like to say, one thing led to another, and here we are.
Yeah. I didn't know Facebook groups had existed since 2009. That's crazy because I didn't even start one until 2017, I think. That was wild.
Actually, you know what? You might be right. They may have not come around until about 2012, maybe. I'll have to look that up.
Something like. Well, it's okay, but
yeah,
but they've been around for a while, right? They had been there, but interesting. They kind of took over, right? They sort of took over the group space. I know a lot of people complain about it, and count me among that. But because I want more control. But it is a huge deal. Okay, let me ask you. I want to ask you kind of a personal question. Like, what have you learned about yourself while building these communities?
Oh, that I have obsessive compulsive tendencies, right? So like I always say, the internet never sleeps, but that doesn't mean you can't. But for a long time, I would work 18, 20 hours a week, just bouncing between communities. Because that dopamine hit they talk about, that is not a lie. There's a lot that can feed things. Also, I am somebody who is comfortable with conflict. I am comfortable like holding space for people's difficult feelings, even in an online space. But there is a point in time where I will get what I call compassion fatigue, which I now recognize as a symptom. It's like one of my sort of mile markers on the way to burnout is things like I have a lot of grace. I have a lot of patience for people. And then suddenly things that never bothered me start to bother me. And that tells me I'm spending way too much time doing the community management and sort of mediating conversations and not enough time with actually having direct person-to-person relationships. So I have to step back for a bit. So yeah, I've learned a lot about self-restraint and boundaries in my time with communities.
Isn't that right? Okay, we're going to talk about that some. I got some other questions for you about how we can do that in a little bit. But it's time for our question of the day. So let's go to our question of the day. Friends, you're watching. I want to know what you think about this. I asked this on Facebook, and I got some interesting answers. So the question is, are online friends real or no? Or not? Like, are they real or not? I thought this was pretty interesting. The best answer I got was a previous guest, Heather Parody, and she said, "I married one of mine." So, yep. That's about as real as it gets. What do you think, Tonya? When you hear that question, what comes up for you?
Oh, definitely. I mean, the whole, I was not a fan of social media. I was not a fan of the online space. I was that person who, back in the day, when everybody had MySpace and they were like, MySpace is the greatest thing. And I was like, I actually have friends to hang out with on Friday nights. I'm good. And then I think you know this, right? But in 2007, I had like a catastrophic health event and I landed in a hospital and like I didn't know where I was. I was so sick. I had no idea where I was, what town or anything. And I had to have emergency surgery. I was in this hospital for about 2 weeks. And maybe day three, I finally kind of had enough awareness, was like lifted from the fog of pain meds long enough to the hospital had just gotten Wi-Fi and I had access to a laptop, and I went into a message board that I had been a part of. And I was like, this is the name of the hospital I'm at. This is what happened to me. Can anybody tell me what town I'm in? And is this hospital any good? And there were 3 people who lived in the town. One person lived within walking distance from the hospital, and she was in my hospital room the next day.
Wow.
So yeah, online friends can be real. And in my experience, sometimes it's your online friends who are there for you when others aren't or others can't be. In my case, others couldn't be, right? I didn't even know where I was at that point. But I've seen over the years, like there's a community that I started back in 2016, and we had a community member who had a fall, ended up suffering a traumatic brain injury, hospitalized, coma. Her mom got a hold of her phone and saw that she had an extensive direct message history with me, saw that we had communities in common, and reached out to me to ask how I knew her daughter, to tell me what had happened to her daughter.
Wow.
Because her daughter couldn't speak, but she was saying my name. And it was because she had RSVP'd for one of my live events and was a no-show. And that just, I mean, she did not have her full faculties, but that was the only thing that she could say was my name.
Wow. Well, that seems pretty real.
So what do you think? What has been your experience?
I think so. Absolutely. I think so. I long ago decided I was going to stop using the distinction in real life versus online, because it's all your life, right? And there were so 2 times when I think this really hit home. One was, okay, my dog has to go out in the middle of a live. We know this is live.
Of course, this is how it happens.
Somebody will come get her. And they were both at conferences. They're both at Podcast Movement, actually. So one was the first time I showed up at Podcast Movement in, I believe, Orlando, Florida. I rolled up, and there was this guy in front of me, and he was just taking his time. And I was so annoyed, and I was like, come on, dude, let's go, take a turn. Let's go get in the parking lot. So I pulled up, parked, got out. That guy gets out. It was Chris Starrin, one of my friends that I was hoping to see. He was the guy. I was like, Chris, you drive slow, but hey, it's great to see you. So we got together, and we spent the whole, we were conference buddies for, I don't know, at least 2, maybe 3 events for sure. And then the other one was another Podcast Movement where I got to meet Amber Cullum and Amy Watson and a whole bunch of other CPAers, Christian Podcasters Association folks. And it was amazing. I'll give you a third. We had, when Podcast Movement was in Denver, I had a barbecue at my house, and Cliff Ravenscraft, who was one of my online kind of mentor people that, we knew each other, but weren't super close at that point. Like, he came to my house, and Rob Kirkpatrick from Focus on the Family came to my house and had my ribs. And like, that was inconceivable to me, right? Before the internet. So I think, my answer would be absolutely. I've made a lot of friends online and people that I'm really grateful to know because I just said yes to making some posts or creating something.
Yeah. And I think you're right. The lines have blurred. I remember back in 2007 sending a Facebook friend request to somebody and somebody being like, oh, Facebook is actually not for my professional contacts. It's only for my friends and my family. I'd be like, oh, okay, that's fine. And now it's, I tell people all the time, I'm like fungus. I'm everywhere. Whatever your favorite platform is, go hit me up. Just please don't make me record a TikTok and we'll all be good. And like, that's like my only boundary, right? Is TikTok. But other than that, hey, hit me up anywhere.
Gotcha. Oh, that's really interesting. Okay. I'm curious about I guess you got to follow this for a second. I'm really curious about the blurring of that and the platforms, right? Like it used to be, you're right. It used to be like, oh, Twitter is maybe where I get news and stuff. And then Facebook is kind of where I talk to the people I went to high school with or whatever. And LinkedIn is where I do all my professional stuff. But increasingly, none of those things are the case, are they?
No. It's part of it, I think, is it was one thing when all we had was Facebook or MySpace, or sometimes, in the early days, right? People had Facebook and Twitter, right? And like you said, Twitter's where I get my news, or Twitter's where I'm at when I'm watching a live event like the Super Bowl and I want to have a community experience around an event. Facebook's friends and family, coworkers, people I know kind of in real life, or interest-based communities. And maybe I'm on Instagram if I think I'm really good at taking pictures, or I like to take pictures of my food. And that's all they had. And so you could be a different person in 3 locations. But as we've added more platforms, it is exhausting to fragment your personality and your identity that many ways. So now people are like, I am who I am, and I am this person everywhere, like it or lump it.
Right. Exactly. Right.
Right?
Yes, I think that's exactly right. So I find that fascinating. I don't know what it means necessarily, but I do think it's pretty interesting. Okay. Here's one thing that has happened though also is we live in this kind of time where we are more connected on all these platforms than ever. And I think we've talked about this before because loneliness is rising as well, right? So there's something in these interactions that's missing. What do you think that is?
Okay, well, I have a theory, unproven. One day I'll write a book about it, maybe. I don't know. But my theory is that first of all, we're paying attention to the wrong thing. Everybody's like, oh, loneliness is this big deal. I don't think it's loneliness so much as it is a crisis of belonging. My theory is that, like, loneliness is a feeling I have. And I think sometimes we don't have the vocabulary to fully express how we actually feel. But when you tell me you feel lonely, even in a room, what that tells me is you're looking around and you don't feel like you belong. You feel like there is something about you that if people actually knew, if you took the time, if I took the time to talk to you, Eric, like over at the water cooler, I would accidentally reveal something about myself that made you like, oh, she just brought her whole party of crazy over here. Okay, I'm going to go excuse myself. Right? And that is, we think that's lonely, but really what it is I don't feel like there's any place I belong. I don't feel like I have a place where I can be accepted as who I am, just as I am. I have to put a mask on for everything. And so that's what I actually think our problem is. And the challenge with belonging is, Eric, you could do everything to welcome me. You could lay out rose petals. You could make me your famous ribs. And you have zero control over how I react or internalize those actions. Yeah. Like maybe I'm a vegan, right? So your ribs are not making me feel like I'm included. Right. And maybe I have allergies. And so the rose petals are not doing it for me. And so part of belonging is it's on me to be able, like I have to reveal enough of myself so that you know how we can connect. And part of it is also you have to sort of set the stage to make me feel safe enough to do that. So it's a partnership. It's not as one way as we like to think of it, and we don't have as much control as we wish we did.
Wow. Yeah, on either end, kind of, right? As either a creator or a consumer.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting. Okay. So that kind of leads to my next question, because I was wondering about this kind of vulnerability and authenticity, right? So what do we get wrong about that, particularly online?
Yeah, so I have to use the words of my friend Rachel Allen. She's my copywriter. We make the mistake of I think we conflate what vulnerability is. We think vulnerability is like raw and uncensored. And what she calls it is drunk crying on the shoulders of the internet. I don't think this is as much of a visual for men as it is for women, but any woman who has ever been in a bar or a nightclub has had the experience where some other woman is like crying and sobbing on her shoulder in the bathroom, like they're best friends. And you're just like, I don't know what to do with this, right? And that's the problem is people like, they're like, well, this is who I am. And you don't realize that when you're typing on the internet, like everybody's going to read those words usually in the voice of their inner critic. So everything you type tends to sound a lot more caustic than you actually intend it. But also, people only get the context you give them, and you're typing it with all the context you have, or you're sharing these like really raw details with all the context you have in your head, but you don't always say your context out loud. So how do I take that? Like there's a creator I followed for several years, and they went through a divorce, and they just had a lot of experimentation in various things, a lot of experimentation with like different like drugs and different like social dynamics and all of these things. And like, if we were friends, I'd be like, yay, you go do you. But as somebody who looked at them as a professional mentor, I was just like, I don't actually know what to do with this. And then pretty soon you're just like, I don't know that I want to do anything with this. In fact, maybe I'll just hit unsubscribe. And I'm not saying hide who you are, right? Like, I think it's great because that person definitely attracted their perfect people with how they were. But for me, right, it was a complete 180 from the context I knew them in. And I just didn't have much of an on-ramp for this new version of them. And so I think that's what we get wrong with vulnerability. We think it means not editing for audience, or we misconstrue editing for audience as censorship. Right? I don't censor myself in this conversation with you, Eric, right? Yeah. Any of my friends or family who watches us talk is be like, yeah, that's Tonya, right? But I do like sit up a little straighter when I talk to you. I use better grammar than I'm talking to my friends in daily life. I'm not quoting as many country music lyrics as I typically do.
Well, feel free anytime.
But I don't know what music you listen to, right? So if you didn't get the joke, it would make for a really bad show, and I would look really dorky.
Well, I'm a hairband guy, so just so you know, for future reference.
Oh, me too. So we could trade those lyrics. See, now I know.
I love it. Okay. I love what you're talking about because this took me a long time to learn, and I would say an unfortunate long time. Mm-hmm. I didn't realize that I didn't understand it. I once read a book. I wish I could remember the guy's name, but he talked about it'll come to me about persona and putting on a persona. So it was a performance coach, and so his idea was like, hey, look at athletes when they're getting ready to go. Like right now, the World Series is going on, and so when the Dodgers and hopefully they don't do it, but the Toronto Blue Jays can do it, and they put on this persona of like, I'm going to hit the ball every time, right? And they have this kind of expectation of themselves, but it's part of who they are. It's not everything of who they are, right? Mm-hmm. Their parents and whatever, and they have different pieces of their personality that they don't take with them on the field. They take the guy who is gonna catch the ball, who's gonna hit the ball, who's gonna throw it 103 right by the guy, whatever. Mm-hmm. Why do they? I don't know. How does your arm not fall off if you do that? But anyway, that's a different story, different podcast. That fascinated me, but it conflicted so much with some of my Christian teaching, my upbringing that I got of, you should always be the same person everywhere, and this authenticity kind of language that I got, until I finally realized, that probably is true, right? Because we don't do this. We are professional at work, right? We have a different kind of, maybe it's a persona, and I'm kind of comfortable with that, the idea concept of a persona. And so are you saying that you can do this online? You can do this in your, like wherever you are. I mean, there's certain things you shouldn't share, right? There's certain things,
right?
Maybe
I think
that don't belong online, although we've probably seen them.
Unfortunately, yes. But I mean, you think about like with vulnerability, right? Okay, let's just pretend I just came off of a big breakup, right? I can sit there because I don't have a huge audience, but I have a decent sized audience, and I can be like, oh, my heart just got broken. Da, 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 da. I really have to stop and think, though, how much am I trying to tell somebody else's story? because that's the other thing that I think
Oh,
where we
yeah.
get really uncomfortable, right? Somebody comes on, we all love like the tabloids. Like people love, my mom used to call them the gossip papers. That was her favorite thing. Any little extra money she'd spend on the National Enquirer because she loved to read about the lives of other people. But, we have to take into consideration now with the internet, like, first of all, we can't see who's watching or who's reading. And so you never know. You think the person you're talking about isn't watching or reading, but chances are they are. And a lot of times the person you're talking about isn't, but there's like 22 people who are watching who suddenly think you're talking about them. I have that happen to me
Oh,
all
yeah.
the time. And I'm like, no, it is not you. No, I don't
I had
even
that
know why
happen.
you think it's you, but okay. Right. But you can't tell other people's story. This was something I went to a speaker conference and I remember people were talking about, like, if you wanted to write a book about divorce or remarriage, like, how do you manage that in a good, like, Christian context? And Kathy Lipp was speaking and she says, well, you have to come to some agreements. And, she talked about how she had been married before. She had children from her prior spouse. Her husband had children from his prior spouse. And so they had some agreements, right? Like, they would not say anything about their prior spouse other than in vague terms. My kids aren't with us this holidays. They're with their other parent, or things like that. Because she's like, okay, first of all, you have to realize every terrible thing you say about your ex, you're also saying about your kid's dad. Do your kids really want to read
Yeah.
that? Probably
Right.
not. Do they really want to hear that? No. So it's not out of respect for the person who did you wrong per se, but it's out of respect for your children. It's out of respect for your family, for other people who were there and witnessed the story and maybe had a different perspective. You still can talk about, hey, when I was going through my divorce, this is how I felt. That's different than saying, I went through my divorce because I was cheated on 67 times and da 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 da. And would you like a picture of the other woman? Like, we don't need to go there.
No, and that's not going to do any good, right? Like that's just
Right.
gonna it's just gonna stir up things. I heard who's the Proverbs 31 lady, Lisa
Lisa
Turkers?
Turkhurst.
Yeah, I heard her talk about this actually about
Mm-hmm.
year and a half, maybe 2 years ago, and it was really, really good the way that she explained basically what you just said. Hey,
Mm-hmm.
share your experience. You can share a lot and what you learned without telling the whole story, without giving all the details. Yeah, that's good. That's good advice. Okay, have you ever had a moment when a community broke your heart, but also taught you something profound about people?
Oh my gosh, yes. So a community broke my heart. I think the hardest thing for me has always been when my community does not show its best side. So, one thing that we know is if you invest in your community will rise up and defend you when you get attacked in any way. But sometimes, in an effort to protect you, to defend you, they are just showing their ugly side. So I had a situation. I posted something on Facebook. It was not my brightest moment. Like, honestly, like, I stand behind everything I did, but then I also realized how different that was from who a lot of people thought I was, right? I used the word stupid. And it was like I shared one of those memes that goes around 67 times where people say, I don't know if this is true, but I'm sharing it just in case. And you're like, this is like the 500th time this is on my feed. Everybody knows this is fake. This will not stop circulating until people stop sharing it. And so I was like, I said, if you're one of these people, you're stupid. Like, Google it. Everybody knows this is fake. And I was so frustrated. I was sitting in a doctor's office waiting room an hour after my appointment. I was just like, right, like we do. Except somebody came on there and just railed. And this was somebody I knew. Not well. We were kind of acquaintances. And she was like, you paint yourself as like this kind person who's so friendly and so accessible, and you're all about community. And here you're going around calling people stupid. The way these memes are written, they scare people. People do this stuff because they are afraid this is going to happen. They believe it. Why would you use your space? Why would you use your opportunity to be so insulting? How dare you? Now, I did not see that, Eric, because then I got called in to the doctor.
Oh
And I
no.
was with my doctor for an hour. maybe 45 minutes. But in that time, that whole post blew up. There was like 30 some comments. I'm getting messages from people at work. Oh my gosh, are you okay? Well, come to find out, I mean, they were just like duking it out. And there were women I had known, like that were in my mom's group who had moved out and like, how dare you talk about my Tonya that way? And it was lovely to see how much people loved me and thought of me. And it was horrible to see them be so awful to someone else.
Yeah.
But what it taught me, you never know who's looking or who's watching. And quite honestly, you don't know other people's context, right? I posted that because people who are really close to me know that when I use the word stupid, like I'm usually like, this is so ridiculous, it's stupid. I don't really mean like, I think you have a cognitive deficit, right? That's not how I use the term stupid. But this acquaintance didn't know that. I also didn't know that this acquaintance didn't really think much of me, right? Had seen me in a couple of interactions, didn't get my humor, just didn't think I was particularly a nice person, didn't understand why anybody liked me, right? So they had this preconceived notion of me, and that post fed that notion. And then when all these people are piling on to defend me, she's like, you've got all these people snowed. And what I had to do is I had to come in and be like, okay, it's so good to be loved, and stand down. You are better than this. You do not name call, not even in my defense. And I like had to get all mommy on them. And then ultimately, and you've known me long enough, Eric, you know, I don't believe in deleting content off the internet because it's never really gone anyway.
Right.
And it just looks like you're trying to rewrite history. But what was posted was so hurtful to people around me that I had to delete it. I was like, no, we're not taking this down. So I took it down, I took it down completely. And then I just posted an apology. But that incident ate like a month of my life.
Wow.
Just in doing the repair work.
Yeah. Fascinating. You remind me of a time we had a fight break out in Christian Podcasters Association about, I had posted, this is when I was doing Podcast Magazine, and it was the first time I got my article was on the cover. It wasn't like my guy, but like my title was on the cover, and I was so excited. So I posted it in there, but it happened to be June. And so the banner at the top of the thing was Pride Month. And so that was like a whole like fight broke out. And I was like, whoa, stop, hold on. Oh, stop, quit it. You know, but it was hard. And it was really emotionally taxing, right? I was like, well, wait a minute. That's not what I want for the group, and not because we all come from different places, and particularly in there, different lots of different things. Wow, what a story. Okay, I want to talk about this, and then we're going to move into a little bit of how after this.
Okay.
But so one of the things we're talking about here, building community, and you talk about building community. But we also hear people talk about building audiences. So what's the difference between audiences and communities?
Such a good question. So how I define it is a community is a two-way reciprocal relationship. So an audience is one way, right? So my email list, I would love for my email list to be a community, but it's not, because I broadcast information to them when I send out my newsletter, and they can reply or not reply. They have no idea whether they are one of 1,500 subscribers or one of 15,000 subscribers. So I always feel like community requires, you can talk to me, I can talk to you, but also you can talk to other members about me and about our conversations. So there's the two-way, and then there's the conversation around it. And so that's, the difference, say, between a Facebook group and us broadcasting a live stream that didn't have comments available, right?
Right.
Or watching television. You can talk to the television all day long. The television can't hear you.
Right.
That's an audience, right?
Yeah.
You're the audience of the news. But in a community, in a membership, if I can sit there and say, hey, Eric, what'd you think about what that guy just said? Like, it reminded me of that one time. And you're like, I hadn't thought about that, Tonya, because when he was talking, I was thinking about this other situation, right? And now you and me are building this whole relationship about our leader, our facilitator. That's
Right.
true community.
Yeah. What happens if we misconstrue those two things and we get them confused? Is there a human cost to that?
I do. I think so. I do think there's a human cost. Well, first of all, audience, you tend to build what they call a parasocial relationship as an audience member, right? So we see this with celebrities. Okay, like somebody sees a celeb like
Oh,
at a
yeah.
concert and they sob, right? Because they have this deep emotional connection to this celebrity. Meanwhile, the celebrity doesn't know they exist. And then parasocial relationships can go so far into the other direction, right, where people are harmful, right? You can have stalking behaviors and all these other things that come from, displaced parasocial relationships. But also, what happens is it can lull you into this false sense of belief of thinking that you have more community than you do, right? And so we see this with people who have a certain level of celebrity and then they make a mistake, right? And the audience turns on them. Audiences are fickle, Eric. They are so fickle because that relationship is one way and a parasocial relationship depends on my perception of you. And I can paint you into all these things because you're not speaking back to me in order to validate or disprove my impression of you. So when you act outside of what I think you should act, like suddenly, like I'm coming at you with a pitchfork. So part of it is people will think that they are much more loved than they really are. They'll think, oh, I have this large community. This means I'm really popular. They may not realize that half of that large community is actually just there because they're waiting for you to fail. So you can get built up pretty high and you can fall. But the other issue with audience is there's no connection. There's no connection between me and the other person who follows you if we're not all able to talk to each other. And so I think the human cost there is we lose sight of the ability to agree to disagree oftentimes. Right? Because as the audience, right, I'm like your biggest fan, giving you 5 gold stars on everything until you say one thing I disagree with that is my internal deal breaker. And now I'm out and I'm like waving a flag saying that Eric Nevins is an evil, awful, terrible person. He must die. And then, somebody else is like, yes. And next thing you know, I went from being grumpy about you to now there's a whole bunch of people who don't think you should be on the planet.
Yeah.
That's where we lose our humanity. That's the other human cost.
Right. Yeah, that's really interesting. I see this on TikTok a lot. So I know you're not a TikTok fan, but I am. And there was a guy recently who he was it was interesting. He was like a chef or something. And so his whole platform was really him at work doing prep work or whatever it was. Those were his videos. And then he started making enough money from his TikTok that he could quit that job. And so then he started doing other stuff. And the whole community, or the whole following, because it was really just, it was an audience, turned on him and was like, hey, that's not what we want to see. And that's not what, you're using us. And that's what they felt like. And I was like, well, that's interesting, right? That's, he didn't have the kind of relationship he thought he had. And so if you kind of mix that up, it can be a problem.
Right. And so they had this very specific view of him, right? And they're watching him because they're interested in whatever he was saying while he's doing prep work. And that's interesting. And then he thought, well, I could leverage this into something else. And see, they felt like they were part of his community. But then when he went to shift, then they started to feel like a product or a commodity.
Yeah.
And the whole creator culture is fascinating to me. Like there is a creator who lives not far from me and he chops wood and he's attractive, right? So he chops wood, he's attractive. But what's funny, and he's addressed this in his videos, is there's all these people who will reference him and refer to, the guy who, the lumberjack who chops wood without a shirt on and like all these things. And he'll come out, he's like, I have never once chopped wood without a shirt on. Anybody who wields an axe knows that you should have a shirt on if you have an axe, because that axe can bounce and a shirt's not a lot of protection, but it's a little bit of protection. He's like, go through my whole feed. But people have built this whole false memory about what he does on TikTok.
That's fascinating. That's interesting. I think I know who you're talking about too. Yeah, that is a very interesting situation for him. But yeah, and he does play into it. But I hear you. But
Yeah,
that's
he
good.
totally plays into it, but it's like funny, right? Because he's like, actually go look.
What are you
And you're
talking
like,
about?
I know that you chopped wood without a shirt on, and you're scrolling. You're like, no, that's never there.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. I want to give our friends a reminder, and then we're gonna go. We're gonna
Okay.
dive into a little bit of how. So, friends, thanks for being with us. Tanya's dropping the heat, so I hope you're listening. Feel free to share this live stream wherever you're watching it. That would be fantastic. You get to be part of the conversation. We have a couple comments we'll get to here in a second, but would love to have you answer. And our question of the day is this one: Are online friends real or no? What do you think? Are online friends real? We have we gave our answers. You'll have to go back if you're watching this, but even if you're watching it later, you can answer the question and let us know. I'll be watching for those. All right, Tonya, I am interested in some of the how we can do these sorts of things. So one of the things I talked about at the very beginning was sometimes, and you mentioned this was a problem for you too, like you can be online forever moderating a community or just constantly. There were times for sure in the last 6 or 7 years where I was constantly on Facebook and on my phone. I actually had to delete it from my phone because otherwise I'm just
Oh,
in there all the time, and I had to make it. It's a work thing. It's on my computer when I'm at work, so it's not on my phone. How can creators kind of show up authentically without feeling like they have to constantly be visible and share kind of everything?
well, I think the first thing is you have to remember that you don't have to do anything you don't want to do. I think the problem that a lot of us run into is, first of all, a lot of people come into the creator space accidentally. Right? They were just doing a thing. People
Mm-hmm.
started watching, they got popular. So they, you know, I don't know anybody who was like, when I was 10 years old, I wanted to be a creator. Mainly because those kids, I mean, those people exist. They're just not old enough yet. But, you know,
Well,
most people
they were
come,
theater nerds back in our
yeah,
time, right? Like they were
right.
different. They were doing different things.
Exactly. So part of it is there wasn't a plan when they got into it. And so people just, they're flying by the seat of their pants and they're trying to figure things out as they go. And it's fun at first. And then one day it stops becoming fun for whatever reason. Maybe it stops becoming fun. I had this conversation earlier today with somebody because life circumstances change. They get married or they enter into a relationship. And now there's something else that is more fun than the job of being a creator or than their online audience. They have children. They are caring for aging parents and they're just realizing, gosh, there's only so many hours in a day and I have to be very protective of the hours I have. So there's a lot of different reasons that their interests may shift. I think the best thing that anybody can do, no matter where you're at in your journey, is have your list of non-negotiables. I don't do this and I do this. So some things that have shifted for me over the years is I used to travel anywhere and didn't charge, right? Like, because I just love to hang out with people and it was fun. And now it's like, okay, I actually have a real cost to replacing myself in this house, right? Because I've got kids I have to take to and from places and all of these things. And so now it actually has to pay 3 times the cost of replacing me in my home in order for me to travel to make sense for business, right? So you don't see me on the speaker circuit right now. I was on the speaker circuit when the kids were younger. I was cheaper to replace back then. Like they just needed somebody to feed them.
Right.
So those are some things, right? What are your non-negotiables? Now, there are some tactical approaches to boundaries. I know a lot of people who are professional social media managers who have 2 devices. They have a work device and a personal device, right? And that personal device doesn't have a single app on it. No
Yeah,
social media.
that's
It is
smart.
strictly like calls, texts. I mean, they can access their email and stuff, but the work device, the one with all the apps, that gets turned off and gets shoved in a drawer at the end of the day because they know if they leave it on, they're going to check it for their notifications. And once you check it for your notifications, you are 4 hours away from doing anything else with your life.
It's all downhill, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Man, even just when I'm trying to work on stuff or schedule things or whatever, if I
Mm-hmm.
open Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, I'm still calling it Twitter. I don't care what Elon Musk says. The it is like it can cost me 15 minutes, like just going
Yeah.
scrolling through or looking at things. I'm like, stop! I gotta stop right there. Okay, what was I doing? Oh yeah, I was gonna go post something. So,
Hmm.
um, it that struggle is real for sure. That is
Yeah,
real.
and there are tools to help. So if you use Chrome, there's Newsfeed Eradicator. It's one of my
Oh,
favorite extensions. It's free. It works on every social media platform I know of that has a feed. So LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. And what it does is it wipes the feed clean. And so all you see when you log in is you'll see just like an inspirational quote, and you can upload stuff if you want it to give you reminders. You can
nice.
still access everything, but you just don't have that endless feed to scroll through. So no doom scrolling.
That's a great idea. I like that. Okay. I want to talk about, you have a new podcast, Find Your Freaks, which
I
I
do.
think is pretty cool. Okay, so how do we know when we found our people, found our freaks?
Well, kind of going back to what I said about belonging, those are the people who, I mean, they almost feel like coming home, right? It's like, you're like, I could hang out with these people forever. Like, I don't have to hide. There's not effort. These are my people. And what I find, and the reason it's called Find Your Freaks is because in all of my community work, what I have found is everybody is walking around with some aspect of themselves that they think if other people knew, that other people would be like, oh, yeah, no, you're not cool. I can't hang out with you. I got to go. And so they spend so much time trying to hide that piece of themselves that it interferes with their ability to actually connect. But then when they find other people who are like, not only are they not hiding that part of themselves, they're like out and proud and like, hey, I want to hang out. Like back when we were kids, right? It'd be the D&D people.
Yeah,
They're like,
right.
there's the kid, the cool guy, the football player who's like, don't talk to me at school about this. Like, this is just something I do on Saturdays. And then there's the kids who are like, hey, did I tell you about the new thing that I did? And I don't know anything about D&D. So
Yeah.
that's all I got for you. But, you know, those people, they get together, they have their own vocabulary, and the rest of
Yeah.
us are watching. We have no idea what they're saying. Right. So that was kind of the sentiment behind Find Your Freaks. And I wanted to be able to have these open conversations about what led people to like hang their hat on that aspect of all the things that they could hang their hat on like, this is my identity that I want to get to know other people and relate to other people around. This is going to be it. And what is it that makes them feel a way, belonging in a way that they don't feel anywhere else? And my hope is, so I do one interview and then I do kind of a commentary episode. My hope is to be able to draw out examples so that when other people are listening, those people who think they feel alone in a crowd, they start learning like these are the kinds of questions I could be asking to find my people or to find people who can accept me for who I am, how I am.
Yeah. I love that. Are there good questions to ask for that?
I think so. So I find, it depends on how secretive you are, right? So like I have a daughter who has autism and ADHD, and she is just waving that flag for the world to see. Partially because we raised her and we were like, in fact, I don't have her shirt on. She has a little business. She has a shirt called Different is Not Defective. That's how we raised her. She's super proud of it. Other people aren't, right? So other kids she knows who are autistic may just say, they may like ask her like, she'll start talking about something random. She's really into gardening right now. And they'll say, oh, you sound like you like gardening a lot. Do you like Legos? And it's because they have autism and their special interest is Legos.
Uh-huh.
And she'll say, no, but like John over there, he really likes Legos. And then they're like, oh. And, she's like, oh, are Legos your special interest? Because she has that vocabulary. Other kids don't. But then they'll just all start talking about their individual special interests because now they've all we all are autistic and we're all okay with our autism. So sometimes you've got some secret lingo that you may ask, but I find in general, you can just ask people. Like if you're trying to figure out if they're your people, you know what to ask.
Yeah.
Like if I want to know somebody, if somebody's really into hair metal, all I have to do is say, what do you think about that like huge I can't even think of what the word is, but that like huge beef, I think it would be a good word, between Bon Jovi and Motley Crue. And if they went like, huh? They could be wearing a Motley Crue shirt and I'd be like, oh, you are not an original, my friend. You do not know. But if you were like, dude, okay, it was funny until Nikki Sixx had the Kill Bon Jovi on the back of his guitar. That is where he crossed the line. Then I'm like, oh, I was in seventh grade when that happened. How old were you? Right. And we start like identifying. Yep. So part of it is knowing the lingo. But if you're somebody who wants to show belonging, it's part of saying, hey, you know, I'm here for you if you have this or if you have this, and being able to run that gamut. Like I always tell people, I was hardwired without the capacity for judgment. There's not much you can tell me about you that shocks me. There's not much you can say that's going to make me like, oh, I might go, wow, okay, you're going to have to explain that a little bit better because I don't quite get it. But, you know, let's have that conversation. And then I'm happy to connect you with anybody I know who may have a similar affinity within the bounds of law. Okay, let's say that.
Right, sure.
Well, we're live on the internet here.
We'll stipulate I would say legal, within the bounds of law and morality, but we can. Some people are going to define that differently.
It's your show. You get to define it however you want.
That's okay. Okay. I love it, and what I hear you talking about, this is one of the reasons I love talking to you, because it always restores my faith in this whole principle that I think is pretty foundational to online content creating, community building. That is your people, right? Finding your people. It's so true. Back in the day, we just didn't have that, right? So you might have, we actually had a lot more magazines because of that, because people would make magazines for very specific niches to go out and connect, that you just didn't have, that you don't really need now, because all that stuff is all available online in a different way. But you can find the people that like the thing that you like, you know. So, and that, I think, is the coolest thing about the internet. Like, it's so good. Right. You don't have to be, you know, I don't think we've ever met face to face, but you're one of the people I think of when I think about community, and I go and you know, and I just love that. I think it's a beautiful thing. Sometimes people can make it a business, and sometimes you can just make it a community, and that's okay. I love that. Okay. We have some questions, so we're gonna go to those here. And hold the phone. This is the fun part of the live part. So we got.
I love the live part.
I love it. Okay, so we have our friend. I'm pretty sure you know Michelle as well. Michelle Rayburn. You know Michelle?
Yes, I know Michelle Rayburn. Not in person, I don't think. I think we only know each other on the internet.
There you go. All right, so. I gotta move it around. She wrote a lot. She's a writer, so she wrote plenty.
Yes.
She wrote. I'm going backward and separating how I use the platforms. It's exhausting to have discussions on Facebook sometimes. Well, fair enough. Oh, it went away. I gotta put it back. And I found my people in other spaces. So I think she's on like Substack now. She's really digging it. Tonya's spot on with the belonging part, which I think is interesting, right? That's that whole thing with belonging. And so it can be different places, different times. It's interesting, I think, how it migrates and moves sometimes, right? Like Facebook used to be a place where you could have some conversations. Mm-hmm. I do find it kind of exhausting anymore in a lot of ways, just because there's a lot of ads and there's a lot of stuff that I just don't want to see. Do you have a thought on that?
Well, I have found that anytime a platform goes really like heavily into algorithm, like letting the computer determine like what you see and who sees what you post, it starts to feel a lot less personal. Yeah. Right? Because of course, I mean, we all know this, like none of us is so naive as to think that Facebook exists because they want world peace, right? We know it's a business. They want people on the platform for as long as possible. And what our own behavior has taught them is that we stay on the platform longer when there is stuff that we disagree with or that activates our negative emotions than things that activate our positive emotions. So I always tell people, you want better on Facebook, you got to do better on Facebook. You got to be better.
Amen.
Right. And it's hard, but that's how it is. And what we see though is like, you know, I can post something. For instance, I I'm on this big gardening project. I'm like all in with my daughter on her gardening project. And so I'm posting things, right? And at first it's it's your friends and family going, oh my gosh, this is so cool, have you thought about this, have you thought about that? And then pretty soon, like, one of the posts got enough visibility, it's starting to get shown into different sectors, and now I'm like getting the randomness of like you shouldn't be growing food, you should you should encourage people to get jobs. And I'm like, I don't know how me growing food, because my daughter wants to like give away food, I don't know how me growing food on my
Oh.
property is telling people not to get jobs, but okay, sure. And we've seen this, like, I have clients who've gone viral, and it's like there's always this tipping point when they're like, and then it got shown to the rest of Facebook. And what the
Yes.
rest of Facebook is always that part of Facebook where you're like, these are not my people. These people should not have seen my stuff. There is no part of anything I put out there that these people will understand, agree with, or like. And quite honestly, there's nothing they're going to say that I need to see. And yet here we are.
And yeah, here we are. So it's a two-sided coin, I think. I think we've been pretty clear
Mm-hmm.
about that sometimes. Okay, Michelle asked us another question, which I thought was great. Here she said, have you ever taken an extended break from your own online community? And how did it impact your engagement if or when you started back up again? That's a good question.
Yeah. So I have taken 2 long breaks from my own individual community. I took a long break back in 2021, like height of the pandemic, and I was like way overworking. I think I was managing 18 online communities at the time, and
Oh my
some community had
goodness.
to go, and mine was the only one, and multiple platforms. Because remember, I'm platform neutral. So we're talking, I was managing Facebook groups, Slack communities, Circle, Mighty Networks, and like some proprietary platforms.
Oh wow.
I could not see straight. So, when I came back, it was a long haul. It took me a year to build back the engagement that I'd had before. I did some redesign and all of these things. And then right now, I'm actually in a period of, it was not so much a planned hiatus, I would say, in my community, but when Facebook changed the rules in April about live streams. So,
Oh
I
yeah.
have gone live in my group weekly for years.
Yes.
I do a lot of educational stuff. I pour a lot of time and energy into this free education. And the fact that it all disappears, I mean, I backed it all up, I have access to it. But this idea that I was building a body of work for people to come into the community and have answers to any question they could have right there for them, to have that no longer be an option, like, exhausted me. Like, the idea of like, how do I replace that made me tired. And then I decided to launch the podcast, and I just haven't found my creator footing yet to go back to the community. But honestly, I went from 60% engagement to, I would be surprised if my group even has 20% engagement right now. So it's hard to build it back, but you can. There's some ways to engineer it, but also part of it is you just show back up and just start being consistent. And the people who valued it before will come back first. And then you have to focus on growing it. And you have to accept the fact that some people have moved on. You mentioned that, Michelle is on Substack. A lot of people are loving Substack right now because it reminds them of blogging back in 2010.
Yep.
The good days of blogging, Eric, before it got all kooky.
Before
right?
SEO, right?
Yeah.
Before it was really all about search engine optimization. Yeah.
It was just about reading interesting stuff, and it wasn't
talking to
about
people.
clicks, and it wasn't about traffic. There's some of the best writing in Substack, and everybody asks me, like, are you going to start a Substack? And I'm like, no, honestly, because the platform of Substack does not work with my brain. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. The only Substacks I read are the ones that come into my inbox. And once I click over into Substack, I'm like, oh, I'm lost again. So then I just exit. But I know that the people who love Substack love that about it. They're like, it just feels like old school blogs and articles. Medium, before Medium got like way too monetized.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
It's a good time for people, and especially for those who love writing.
Yeah. So they'll do podcasts also, and they'll do, I think they're doing video maybe.
They do live video now after Facebook did its whole thing. Yeah.
There you go. Right. It's so, that is one thing that you do have to kind of be moving a little bit. But then sometimes your community, you miss people or whatever, but that's
Yeah.
a whole thing. So interesting. Friends, I can guarantee that you probably learned something today, listening to Tonya, not only her enthusiasm, but also just her wisdom. So that's always good. I'm sure it's hard fought. Well won. Hard earned is what I mean. So, Tonya, people can find you. It's TonyaKubo.com where they can find you. And then Find
Yeah.
Your Freaks. If you want to go listen to the podcast, FindYourFreaks.com. Go check that out. Absolutely recommend that you subscribe. But you do some other things that we didn't talk about. So I mentioned very early,
Which is totally fine.
fractional CMO, but I want you to mention them right here. Tell us what else you can do. If people want to get in touch with you, if they're like, I like Tonya, I'd love to see what else we could do.
Yeah.
What might you tell them?
Thanks. So, I am all about community. So my favorite thing to do is build community strategies for free and paid groups, where I come in as a fractional chief marketing officer, or I sit kind of between marketing and operations a lot of times, because a lot of people think they have an engagement problem or they think they have a community problem, and they actually have some deeper business issues. And so when I come in as a marketing officer for them, I get to look at the business as a whole and figure out, okay, what are the entry points people are coming into your space, and what's the best way to guide them into an ecosystem where they're actually part of your community, if that's what you want. For other clients, their industries don't make true community make sense, but they want to use community-driven tactics and strategies. And so they'll pull me in for that. So I work a lot in public health, healthcare, school systems, a lot of private schools, those where they need community building tactics, right? But it's not traditional online community like you would think of.
I love it, friends. Reach out to Tonya if you need any of those services. She will help you. Tonya, thanks so much for being here. I always appreciate it so much. If you could leave us with just one thing, one little bit of inspiration, what would you say?
I would say that your perfect people are out there, even if you don't think so. But sometimes in order to find them, you have to be willing to be vulnerable enough to go first and to reveal what you're really looking for. And it's hard, but if you're willing to stick your neck out a little bit, you would be surprised what you find.
I love it, friends. Why not just go first? Why not just see what happens? You probably have something. My guess is, if you're like me, something comes up in the back of your mind and you're like, oh, it's right there. It's right there. Yeah, maybe I should post that thing, or maybe I should try to see if there's other people out there. You should just go ahead and do it. You don't know how your life is going to change. Thanks for being here, Tonya. I appreciate it, guys. Again, TonyaKubo.com. Follow us, subscribe on YouTube. We'd love that. And I want to leave you with this, as I often and usually do. We had a great conversation about community. Remember, you are only human, but humans do great things. Sometimes they build amazing communities. Why don't you go do something? Go take a little bit of action today. Thanks for being here, Tonya. We'll catch you guys next time.